Hey folks, I appreciate everyone who's hopping on a little early to make sure they're ready for the start of the webinar. We love some timeliness. Feel free to pop in the chat where you're tuning in from today. I know typically we get a pretty global audience, so it's great to hear where everyone's from. Awesome, we got one person from Italy. Welcome. I've got to get a playlist going for these moments before we start our webinar. I'll put it together, so you guys have to join the next one so you can hear what I come up with. All right, we'll give it a few more minutes. Welcome everyone who's joining now. We'll get started shortly. All right, I hope everyone's had a good start to their week. We're midway through now. So yeah, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, mention where you're from or what you do. And I think I will kick it off and we'll wait for more people to join. This webinar is recorded, so even if you join a little late or you have to leave a little early, you'll receive the full recording. But before we dive into the content, I thought it would be fun to start with a poll today. So let me find that. So I'm going to launch this poll now, which you should be seeing. Just some introductory questions about your experience with content marketing, streamlining your content marketing workflows. So that should be popping up on the bottom there. Feel free to pop in an answer. It's really quick, just 2 questions as we get started here. All right. So I'll start with an introduction of myself. My name is Talius Chickering. I am a marketing campaign manager for Issue. I deal with our event and webinar strategy. As you can tell, I am a Chicago native, a coffee lover, and I race bicycles. So as I mentioned, the chat and Q&A are open below. So you should find those in the bottom Zoom menu. Feel free to introduce yourself, mention comments in the chat. But if you have a specific question, it would be fantastic if you can put that into the specific Q&A button. That way, I can make sure we get to it at the end when we have a dedicated Q&A section. If you put it in the chat, it may get lost with all of the messages. So please pop that into the Q&A. Yeah, as I mentioned before, this whole presentation, this whole webinar is meant to be a resource for you. So you will receive the slides and the recording in an email after this webinar. And these slides include a lot of links for references or sources or resources, which I encourage you to take a look at afterwards and kind of continue exploring what we begin to talk about today. The majority of this webinar is going to be a presentation. We're going to be talking about the 4 pillars of content marketing operations, planning a content marketing and distribution strategy, rethinking workflows with a specific use case with Insigniam, who is an issue user, and then streamlining your content marketing to save time, save money, really getting into the meat of how you can begin to do that. And then, as I mentioned, we'll end with a Q&A section at the end. So let's dive right in to what those 4 pillars of content marketing operations are. The 4 pillars are people, planning, process, and tools. But let's break this down a bit. People actually refers to the teams and individuals creating your content itself, whatever that content may be. It's the people responsible for creating it. So this can deal with anything from team dynamic and communication. How are people communicating and collaborating on this content? Hiring and training, making sure you actually have the right people who are trained properly involved in content creation, and then development of the team as a whole. Planning refers to kind of, checking all the boxes of things you need to kind of get set before you start creating this content. So that has to do with developing strategy, setting objectives, defining who your target audience even is, and then kind of looking more granularly at the calendar and the workflows involved in doing all of this. So it's saying, what do we want our content to achieve? How are we going to be achieving it? Who are we going to be targeting? Kind of setting the framework here. Process is essentially everything that allows you to, effectively, achieve the strategy that you've set out in that planning phase. So this is everything from creation, editing, approval, distribution, performance monitoring. So who is doing this? Where are we doing this? What is this going to look like? What are these actual processes? Looking at the details of kind of step by step, how we're going to be accomplishing these goals when it comes to content creation. And then tools is kind of the final piece of the puzzle. So this is the software and technology used to support these content marketing campaigns. So this can be everything from a content management software, marketing automation software, analytics software to kind of track the progress of these goals, and social media management. So these are kind of the 4 pillars of content marketing operations. So as you're, growing your strategy, or if you already have a strategy, this is a good place to start and say, all right, are we making sure we're optimizing all of these pillars? Are we focusing too much on one? Have we completely, neglected one area of this? And then you could, I'm seeing one comment here that the screen is not shared. I want to make sure it's looking on my end like the screen is being shared. If other people are not seeing the slides that I'm looking at right now, please mention that. I will, I'll just share it again because I want to make sure everyone can see what we're working on here. There we go. We're back to these slides. So again, if anyone else can't see these slides, please let me know. All right, moving on. Let's now dive into how you actually go about planning that content marketing and distribution strategy. So we've talked about the 4 pillars. How do you go about actually developing that strategy? The first part of that is going to be a content assessment. So this is basically saying, let's review our current strategy. If we are producing some sort of content right now, let's take a look at how we are, if we're achieving our goals, if we have goals, and what this looks like. So this is reviewing the creation process, the distribution process, and the general management of the whole flow. So what are we noticing is successful? either from analytics or from comments within the team or from comments from customers, and what is not going so well. What have we noticed could be improved? What roadblocks are coming up? Is there something, when we're moving from one step of the creation process to the distribution process, are we missing some links? Are people not communicating? What's really happening here? And what areas do we see specifically to grow? This also includes looking at the competitors in your playing field. What companies that are similar to you, what content are they creating, what topics, what thought leadership is involved in that, how often are they producing content and what channels, and kind of seeing where you stack up amidst those other competitors. So it's not just doing an internal review, but kind of seeing what the playing field is that you exist in. So this is a great first step. Before you can develop the strategy, you kind of need to understand where you are now. Moving into the second step is going to be defining clear and specific goals. So what we've laid out here are 4 goals that we often see, which can be increasing traffic, generating leads, improving engagement, and boosting sales. So these are common goals when it comes to content itself. So you're creating this content, what purpose is it going to serve? What's the end goal? So you need to understand what dictates success for your content. And this is kind of how you do that, deciding what you want your content to do. So it can be any one of these, it can be a combination of these points, it can be something that we haven't mentioned here. But I would like to mention that it should kind of align with those broader company goals. So creating content is often just one part of a larger marketing effort and a larger team effort and a larger company effort. And these goals should also align with one another. So you should make sure that your goal isn't entirely overlapping another goal with another team and is unique and effective. And then you can also benchmark based on prior years and quarters. So this, if you already have a content marketing strategy in place and you're saying, okay, this is how well our content did based on what these goals are last year, we want to see, X percentage increase this year based on what's realistic for your own organization. The third step here is going to be actually developing the strategy when it comes to the content pieces themselves. So the first piece of this is going to be deciding what type of content you want to create, because there are truly a lot of options. And we've listed a few here: blogs, ebooks, social media, both paid and an organic strategy. When it comes to that, paid is like boosting an Instagram or Facebook post or running ads, and organic is just traditional posting. You can do video, whether that's, higher quality polished videos for YouTube or your website, or short snippets that can be just as effective for social media, creating dedicated landing pages and having really good content on your website, and then creating marketing materials, marketing brochures, editorials, and other long form content. So you don't have to be creating all of this content. This also especially depends on your team size and your bandwidth and the experience you have. So if you're just getting started, if you don't have a current content marketing strategy, which I'm seeing from my poll is about 40 to 50% of people on this call, you might want to start with just a few channels. So maybe start with really dialing your social media and working on one quality ebook per quarter or something like that, or really starting with something that's manageable. And then as you grow and as your team grows, you can begin to add these other channels in there and have a regular cadence. Which brings me to the timing. You're going to want to align within your team and the broader company, what's the expectation for how many pieces of content we're producing every month, every week, every quarter. And you want to make sure that your goals, as we just talked about last slide, align with the timing here. So you want to make sure you're producing enough content to sync up with what your goal is. And that brings us to the final point on this page, which is aligning on KPIs, key performance indicators. So these are the kind of metrics involved with those goals we talked about. What are the actual numbers that you want to be hitting when it comes to impressions or engagements or clicks or sales, whatever that specific goal is, what that specific metric that you want to hit. So now moving on to our fourth and final tip in this section, which is going to be content management. So you're creating all of this content, you have multiple players involved in the creation. Sometimes it can get messy. It can be hard to keep track of who's created content for what channel, what you have going out in the week, what's already been created, tracking who's doing what, and making sure kind of all your ducks are in a row, especially as you begin to grow your organization and your content marketing strategy. So some example, this top point here, an effective content management workflow allows you to create, publish, and distribute your content according to your goals. So essentially making sure that you're effectively hitting your benchmarks and things are kind of going according to plan. And these content management platforms can be everything from content calendars, task management software, collaboration platforms, and obviously, as we're talking about today, Issue. And we're all about, as many of you may know, creating once and sharing everywhere, which is essentially what we're talking about here when it comes to content management, making the most of your content, making sure it's effective as possible, and that multiple players can come in and kind of work together to make your team as effective as possible. And part of this are the integrations that Issue currently has, which include Canva, InDesign, MailChimp, etc. So with our Canva and InDesign integrations, you can go right from creating content in these platforms and then move that directly into your Issue account. So we have resources about these integrations if you'd like to dig in a bit further, which is kind of great for improving your content management strategy. And then we also have our Teams plan, which essentially allows separate workspaces for other people or other groups on your team. So this is perfect if you have a larger team or you have different locations or different projects or different clients. This is a great way to kind of parse that out. Yeah, so now that we've talked about kind of developing the strategy itself, I thought we would take a few minutes to kind of take a look at a specific example of this. This is an issue user, Insigniam, and we're going to talk a bit about who they are, what their content strategy is, and then how they're using Issue to optimize that. So let's rethinking workflows with Insigniam, a bit of background about who they are. They are a global firm and Issue user that specializes in organizational transformation consulting for senior executives of top performing companies across various industries. So they are a major player in this space and do really groundbreaking work. As I say here, Insigniam helps clients achieve these unprecedented results by building collaborative partnerships, identifying new possibilities, and then designing and implementing innovative approaches. So they kind of go one step beyond the typical consulting firm that is not just, all right, here are these 3 things we're going to do that lead to this kind of immediate result, but kind of working to create longer term change through these innovative practices. But let's actually dive into the content strategy of Insigniam and then what you can take from this strategy and implement into your own organizations, regardless of whether you're just an entrepreneur just starting out or you also work for a larger organization. It will apply to you both. So I'd like to talk a bit about thought leadership here. And this is great even if you are not a large organization. Establishing yourself as someone who has expertise in a very specific area. So you want to understand who your audience is and what the specific niche is that you fill in your organization, and then you can develop thought leadership content related to that. So in Insigniam's case, they produce blogs, audible content, podcasts, videos, and then this quarterly publication that they publish on Issue. So I'll actually show you a few examples of this live. This is Insigniam's website, and they have a whole drop down here related to thought leadership. They call it thought leadership itself on their website. This could be a resources page. It could be a, even if it's just starting with a blog, this could be your blog page. But as you can see, there's a variety of resources all around similar topics that, establish Insigniam as a thought leader in their space. And here we also have this quarterly magazine, which is thought leadership for executives. So it's described as being from executives for executives. So again, that really niche specific audience, which again is important when you're creating your content and developing those workflows to understand who the specific niche audience is. It's obviously not going to be the same as Insigniam's. It's going to be related to your own unique brand. So as you can see here, they have a really nicely laid out publication. They have links on almost every page, which is an Issue feature that can take you to either other pages, embed videos, or take you to external websites. So as you can see here, they use it almost as a table of contents. So another great feature. So now we kind of have an understanding of who Insigniam is, what content they produce. Let's take a look at how you can streamline your content strategy to save with Issue. So a lot of these points we're going to touch on are points that Insigniam really takes to heart and implements in their own content strategy, but also that every one of you can, begin implementing either, with your own content strategy or specifically Issue as a tool after this webinar. So these first 3 points, let's dive into this. Removing silos between teams and departments. So especially as you begin to grow your content strategy, and we've touched on this a bit before, things can get really siloed off. So everyone kind of runs in their own lane, does their own specific projects here, and information can get lost just because it's not shared. There can be confusion between someone might be doing something that's very similar to what you're doing, and if you just miss that one conversation, that could be harming the results ultimately of your content strategy. So also at Issue, what we really are trying to work to do is allowing key contributors to come together in a single platform. So whether this is a head of marketing, a director of content, a social media manager, designers, other staff members, copywriters, you can all kind of have a hand in the content you're creating, and then you can bring that over into Issue and kind of all have a hand in working with the Issue platform to optimize that content. So Issue is one powerful tool with many, many integrations. So this means you can essentially go from the design, staging, publishing, sharing, and reporting stage, all within one platform, which, as we're talking about today, is a super effective way to streamline that whole workflow. So you're not doing things in one platform that you then have to download and share with another platform or share with another team member. You can kind of combine that whole workflow within one platform. So again, as I touched on earlier, this can look like everything from our Canva, Adobe, or MailChimp integrations to then taking this content and producing other assets. Additionally, centralized publishing, approvals, and sharing. So I kind of want to walk you through, what I'm talking about here, what one of these workflows that we're discussing looks like. So for example, a designer on your team would create something in InDesign, create that final product visually, and then export that to Issue using our integration. A copywriter could then log in and proof that drafted publication. A content marketer adds links, videos, and hits publish. And then that salesperson begins sharing the link with prospects or embedding on the website or whatever it may be. So you can kind of see how the various members of this organization come together to produce something that is really, really effective. The final 3 topics we're discussing today, the first of which, omni-channel distribution and no-code embedding. So, Issue, we were really proud to say that we have multiple formats for distribution. So this is everything from mobile optimized articles to social posts to GIFs, embeds, and QR codes. And this is all from that one piece of content that you originally create. So instead of having to, go into another platform and create an entirely new social post from scratch, or going in and figuring out how to create a QR code on another platform, or trying to work out, figuring out how a mobile article looks on your website. You can do all of this from your one initial asset, which brings multiple benefits for organizations of all sizes. So if you're a small organization, this saves you a massive amount of time as an individual. If you're a larger organization, you can have multiple team members kind of working, collaborating in the same platform. This is also helpful because when you create assets for all these just different channels, it kind of assures that your content reaches your audience. So if someone sees something on social media in an article, they see it, physically at an event with a QR code, they then run across it on your website or receive another GIF via email. This assures that your message is coming across and people are more likely to engage with your content and ultimately purchase or your product or your service or whatever your end goal is for your organization. Successful SEO without any of the work is another thing that brings a lot of value to Issue users, including Insigniam. So Insigniam moved away from print to fully digital SEO optimized assets, and that's because Issue flipbooks are automatically optimized for ranking on search engines. So it kind of helps boost your rankings without having a dedicated SEO strategist. So it kind of helps, with this SEO strategy without you having to take a dedicated person or a dedicated amount of time to specifically figure out how you can optimize SEO strategy. It's kind of wrapped in to the content you're already creating, which a lot of users find extremely beneficial. And finally, I'd like to mention our statistics tool, insightful reporting and analytics in one dashboard. So once you've created all this content, all the team members have collaborated on everything from the designing to it, to the sharing, to the distribution. You can then take a look at the statistics page in Issue, which kind of dives into how your content is doing. So this is everything from impressions to reads to read time, clicks, page views, demographics, etc. So you can really dive into how successful your content is, and then you can optimize that for the future. So now just a quick review of what we have covered today and how you can begin implementing this in your own strategy. I'm seeing one question right now about what SEO stands for, and that stands for search engine optimization. So making sure that, when people are searching for content on Google or whatever search engine, your content is kind of optimized for that and, has a high ranking as possible. So what we covered today starts with those 4 pillars of content marketing operations. So when you're kind of beginning to evaluate a current or future content marketing strategy you have planned, you want to make sure that you're touching all of those bases and have all of your bases covered, so to speak. Then we kind of took a look at planning a content marketing and distribution strategy. So how do you go about, planning this actual strategy? What content you're creating? What goals are you going to have? What's involved with that? And then taking a look at how Insigniam, what their content strategy is, and finally, how you can use Issue to streamline your own content strategy to save time and to save money. And that is actually all I had for you folks today. We do have time for a Q&A. We don't have tons of questions in the chat, but that's all right. If anyone has any questions they would like to discuss, please pop them into the Q&A or into the chat. We should be able to see them both right now, and I'm happy to answer them live. If you also want to, if you think of questions later, if you're reviewing the slides or reviewing the recording and want to shoot us a quick email at webinars@issue.com, that will go right to me, and I can respond to your question then if that comes across it later. All right, well, I'm not seeing any more questions. Oh, here we go. This is an interesting question. What do you believe is the best way to make an impact when communicating with employees at a large company? So I think, if this is discussing the content that you're creating in your company, I think the best way is to really figure out what your niche is and what purposes you serve for your specific audience. So you really want to understand what content engages with your contents and with your audience, and speak to them on a personal level so they feel like the content you're producing really resonates with the problem they're trying to solve, really resonates with what their daily routine looks like, so that they understand that you kind of building that bond between your organization and the specific customer. I'm seeing one question about sharing this recording. So that will be sent via email, and that'll be kind of open access. So feel free to just forward that email to other members of your organization or colleagues who are kind of looking for similar answers to the questions that we've discussed today. All right, well, I think that's it for me today. Thank you again for attending, and stay tuned for future Issue webinars. We'll be diving into a whole host of topics. Thank you again. Have a great rest of your week.